This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by Linode, high-performance cloud hosting for everyone. Visit linode.com/MacVoices and take $20 off your first server package. Welcome to MacVoices Live. This is the talk of the Apple community, live on Facebook. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner, and we have quite a gathering already for our Apple WWDC discussion, and more to come, hopefully. And that means you, because if you are watching on the Facebook page, I am about to hit the button to put the Zoom information in chat. So if you want to click that link and join us, that's great. If you'd rather just hang out on Facebook and watch it and comment there, that's fine too, whatever suits you. And I'm not even going to pretend to try to do an introduction here because we'd end up with the whole show being taken up. So I'm just going to ask everybody to wave as we go around the room so that they know. So first up, according to my screen, Mr. Mark Fuccio with Penguins. Mark, good to see you.
Hello, good to see you all.
Mr. Brett Terpstra with no penguins. Brittany Smith, our favorite head doctor or something, I don't know. Frank Petrie of Screencasts Online magazine. Mr. Jeff Gamet, the one and only. Mr. Mike T. Rose, the other one and only. Maria Epelman. Mr. Frederick Van Johnson is here. Frederick, good to see you, with the man with the hat pulled down, trying to look incognito.
Trying to look cool.
It's working. It's working. Jim Ray, the developer of Panorama. Jim, good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Good to see you. I'm hiding the fact that my hair's not cut.
Okay, that'll work. That'll work. And Elle Newman is here, the lady who likes to twist us all into pretzels or something. Good to see you, Al. So thanks so much for being here, everybody. This is fantastic. I don't think I've ever managed a crew like this, so we'll get to it. So obviously, I'm going to ask you to keep your comments short because we have a lot of people and we may have more joining us. But we want to talk about Apple's WWDC announcements. This is our first virtual keynote that we've seen, and that's kind of the first place I want to start real quick. Was it effective? What did you think? Did you like it? Did you find that it's better with a crowd?
Oh, this was one of the best keynotes I've ever seen. It was strong.
It was a fantastic keynote, and I will freely admit that the first couple minutes, I was making comments like, "Wow, this feels like an infomercial," and then I realized it's because there's no audience and it was just a little bit different. But wow, it was a really well done event.
That could have been a show on Apple TV Plus.
Totally.
And it is an infomercial.
It was. How many think it was done live? Yeah. How many think it was done live versus all recorded and just queued up and broadcast out?
Oh, none of that was live.
It's all recorded. None of it was live.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it seems so polished. Yeah, I mean, it really did. That's
the beauty of it, though. Like all of the glitches that you kind of forgive in a live production.
Yeah.
None of that happened. None of that was there. So it never took you out of the kind of magic of the moment. You didn't have to forgive any on-stage shenanigans or transitions between people or demos not working. Like I really appreciate the pre-recorded nature of the whole thing.
Yeah, it was like really the most efficient way to deliver the content that we needed to hear. It was Apple polished to the nth degree, and not a whole lot of fluff in between and jokes and all that stuff. It was just this is the information presented in a lucid, intelligent way that we could all understand, and then bounce over to the website to go deeper, which is. I appreciate the efficient use of my time, Apple. Thank you.
How about that transition to the undisclosed location for the Apple Silicon section when they went out and
through the fountain? Oh my God! And down the hallway. That was my favorite moment of the entire thing. It's like, oh yeah, here we go. We're going to the Get Smart Lab, and they kept Brett, to your point about losing the spontaneity or the slightly ragged edge of a live event. Yes, absolutely. This was very produced, very effectively produced, but they kept the teasing Craig Federighi, which it can't be an Apple keynote without sort of the Air Force One jokes. And they kept just enough of that it had that sense of playfulness. And yes, you're watching an extraordinarily well-produced infomercial. This is QVC 8, 5,000 to the max. Yeah. But it also had a little bit of that think different spirit in there as they were going along. So it was still fun to watch.
Wait, I'm disappointed though. You mean that dive into the pool and into the secret lab wasn't real?
No,
Who's to say?
My assumption is that the undisclosed location has now been disclosed.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And as someone who lives in the Bay Area, the unknown secret is across Wolf Road from that complex. A bunch of homeless have set up, in the past couple of months since the COVID crisis.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
Interesting.
It's true.
Interesting.
I think I went into that event thinking it was going to be a virtual summit type flow. And once I got my brain past that and, to the understanding that it was just a very polished infomercial, but an infomercial for stuff that I'm really interested in. So, once I made that leap from, this is not a summit, this is not a interactive thing, this is a one-to-many thing, then I could sit back and sort of relax and consume it and enjoy it. So, I think they did a good job on it.
Am I the only one that took a couple of minutes to realize that all the dots in the beginning animation were people sitting at laptops streaming?
I don't think you were the only one.
I didn't see that part. So
I still don't even know what you're talking about.
The very opening, they kept showing the NASA. It's like when you watch an Apple TV and it dumps out and it has some NASA shots. And then they dissolved. It went to another shot that looked like a NASA shot, but it looked like the Elon Musk thing about doing Wi-Fi with like tens of thousands of satellites. And slowly you got closer to the Earth. And as you got closer, you found that each speck was a person sitting at a laptop. It was a memoji.
I'm going to have to go back and watch all over again now.
Oh, it's the very beginning.
Yeah, it's just the first 30 seconds.
Yeah, I was probably getting popcorn.
It's the graphic that they have on the front page of apple.com right now. Those emojis in front of laptops. Yeah.
In fact, if you go and watch the day one roundup, Serenity Caldwell, formerly of Macworld, now of Apple, did the day one roundup video for WWDC, but she narrated it as the memoji. So it's her memoji sitting at a laptop with her voiceover talking through day one. It's a minute and a half, minute 45. It's great.
That's awesome.
But it's the same theming all the way through.
I have to say, though, if you step back for a second and think about the amount of information they packed in, I mean, this was a very dense, if you want to call it an infomercial, it was very dense. And one of the reasons I think it played well, I think we'd have all had exhaustion if we'd had to wait for all the applause that would have accompanied all those announcements.
Correct.
So
there was no break. So everything was it was almost like a garden hose or a fire hose, just constant flow of info.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Honestly, I kind of hope they do it this way again next year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I kind of hope that everything in the world kind of learns a lot from all this COVID-19 related changes. I think a lot of things could just stay this way and I'd be happy.
Yeah.
Well, Brett just doesn't want to leave his house ever.
Well, I mean, I never did anyway. That's not.
Right.
Well, I feel like people are coming to me more now.
Well, so what's interesting is I heard I haven't been able to watch the presentations today because the one disadvantage of actually not going there in person is that I am home, which is now apparently my office, so I can't actually come up with an excuse to not work during the day. But so I was seeing on Twitter a lot of people was saying that it's actually very nice because a lot of the presentations normally would be scheduled for an hour-long session, and not every presentation needs to be an hour long. And so some of them have been like a very concise 15-minute, this is what you need to know about X. And it's only 15 minutes of material. Well, there you go. And, as Brett was saying, a lot of the world is going to learn. I'm preparing to teach all my classes in this coming fall semester online or mostly online. And I'm kind of mentally making notes. And it's like, not every lecture has to be 80 minutes long. I can just pre-record things and have them be exactly as long as they need to be.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. I mean, it's sort of like, how many times have you read something where, it's a book and you think, oh, this is a magazine article, and it's a magazine article, and you think, okay, this should have been an essay, and it's an essay, and you think this should have been, 5 sentences. So
there's a movie called It's All Gone Pete Tong, in which the main character says, I should write a book. And his girlfriend says, that's brilliant. And then he says, no, that takes too much work, maybe a pamphlet or a brochure. His life story. Yeah.
I was kind of happy. I mean, all the software stuff they dumped on us yesterday was so dense, so much to take in. I'm actually glad they didn't announce any hardware yesterday, because
they did though.
Yeah, but not like what originally the rumors were. I mean, I would have been so fried. It would have been like a 2.5 hour, 3 hour presentation.
So who is upset that Apple can't keep a secret? I mean, we've been hearing about this move to ARM for 6 weeks now, or if not, I mean, in terms of substantial rumors, as well as for years before that.
Yeah, but they pulled off an interesting thing. They did a test, at least from what I heard, was the leaks about no hardware at the last moment, and iOS was going to be called iPhone OS. And those leaks came out through Posner and I forget who else. And I think they were trying to find out who was leaking what information to who on certain things.
Okay. And were the people shot this morning at dawn?
Yes, summarily. It was on CBS Morning News.
That comes tomorrow with Fries. But Mark, you took me, we're not going to have time to discuss every single announcement, obviously, but I felt like the ARM was probably the biggest one. And especially given that this is a developers conference. I mean, some of the other features are obviously developer focused because they want to show people what they'll have to work with. But the announcement to ARM is significant. And I'm curious to see, what the reaction. I've heard of some excitement. I've heard some negative comments as I've been perusing things today and listening to different podcasts. And I'm curious what this group takes away from that.
So let's just vote first, thumbs up or thumbs down, and then get into the commentary.
Good.
So
everybody here likes it.
As a developer, I am unthrilled about going back to the land of universal binaries and Rosetta. That said, that last time we went through that transition, it led us to a much better era of computing. And that's what this is going to do. I did just get notification about an hour ago that I'm getting a developer transition kit.
Awesome.
So I sold my cat and bought a Apple Silicon Mac Mini that I'm pretty excited about.
I mean, you rented one?
No, I still have the Apple TV I got through the. No, you don't. You pay $500, you keep it.
No, they're very clear. You have to return it because obviously it's you have to return it. I'm not quite sure when. I've heard anywhere from a year to 18 months, but at some point it has to go back, which obviously makes sense.
Do I get my 500 back at that point?
I think you get credit for it. You get it. You're gonna get it. You're gonna get a pallet full of iPod socks.
Because I went through the Apple TV. I went through the Apple TV when they came out with the version 4, and I got the pre-release unit for that. For like $100, and that
is
never
not really
had to go
a pre-release.
Back.
Right.
Well, that's not that different from the actual price of an Apple TV. So I'm guessing they're okay with you keeping that, but not a computer.
Anyway, I'm getting one, and I'm excited about the development process that's going to happen now. But
as an ex-product guy, there's no way that they want non-standard, non-product hardware out there. Now, it's going to be interesting to see how they enforce it, because I suspect they'll be shipping hundreds, if not thousands, of these things. So
yeah, they must be.
How they're going to get everyone back.
Well, they said the same thing in 2005 when they did the Intel transition, that you had to give it back, but apparently a lot of people never did give it back or were even asked for it. So at the end of it, you may wind up getting to keep it, but they are saying, no, that's their
So it's
The
Scout's
idea up
honor.
front
type
is-
of
Brett,
thing.
so the important thing to remember is when the lease program ends, wait for them to call you. Don't call them.
Well, and,
Yeah,
and
that's-
Brett, you shouldn't have sold your cat. Sorry, you blew that.
I know I feel really bad now.
Yeah, yeah. This edition of Mac Voices is brought to you by Linode, your solution when you need a virtual server in the cloud. Use the code MacVoices to take $20 off your first purchase at linode.com/MacVoices. Whatever you're looking to do online, you can build it on Linode. But not just build it. Provision, secure, monitor, and back it up too. Linode is a full-service hosting operation with 10 data centers worldwide, including the latest in Toronto and Mumbai. And Linode isn't just a hosting operation. They are a world-class hosting operation with SSD storage, a 40 gigabit network, and industry-leading processors powering their servers. If you know what you want, you can dig right in. Or you can let Linode do the setup for you with their easy one-click installs of a variety of servers. Find out what Linode can do for you by visiting linode.com/MacVoices and using the offer code MacVoices to get $20 off your first purchase. That's linode.com/MacVoices and the code MacVoices to take $20 off your first server. It won't be your last. Thanks to Linode for their support of Mac Voices. And I have to wonder. I mean, at that point, okay, it's after they've been used, is that just a way to cut down on maybe the number of people asking for them? And by the way, Apple does hold the keys to the kingdom, because if you're a developer and you've developed on that, and you want it in the Mac App Store, guess what? They could shut you down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So the ARM transition, everybody feels pretty good about, apparently. And Brett, I agree with you. I think this does feel like another one of those one step back, two steps forward, or maybe just a step off to the side to the universal binary thing. But that transition, as I recall, at least for me, it wasn't terribly painful. Now, maybe as a developer, it may have been a lot more.
No, that's the beauty of Rosetta, is up until things absolutely got cut off and wouldn't work anymore, you never had to realize you are running a PowerPC app on your Intel machine. That's the whole point of Rosetta, is it makes it as painless as possible. So it's, from a developer standpoint, it's a little bit of extra hassle, and it's going to increase binary sizes for a while, but really to the end user, it should be painless.
And it probably won't have much effect on binary sizes. Like I checked yesterday, my app is 89 megabytes. The code is 4 megabytes.
Sure.
So if it's twice the code, then maybe my app's going to go from 89 to 93. Who cares?
So Jim, that other 85 megabytes of stuff, of what is that stuff composed?
Well, there's a lot of help information. There's images. And other resources.
I was just trying to figure out why Mark had become a 69 megabyte download, and I didn't realize it. And I went in, and like 45 megabytes of that is my help system.
Uh-oh.
Really?
Wow.
So I've cut that significantly. I'm no longer documenting anything.
That's probably going to make your life so much easier.
So much easier.
Did you just replace all the help with the picture of the cat you sold?
The app stuff. Yeah. Those get downloaded from the web as needed.
You're going to be on Twitter a lot.
Jim, you took it out of my mouth. I was wondering, is that an advertisement for pushing people to your website to build a better help system there?
Well, you want to have help in the app. So no, I was just saying, my help is all HTML. It's all web pages, but there's a viewer in the app. But there's like over half a gigabyte of images in the help system. It's a complicated app, so it's got thousands of pages, and there's like over 2,000 images in the help.
Sorry, Jim, what is your app?
It's called Panorama 10.
Okay, I'll take a look.
Panorama 10?
Yeah, with an X.
Okay.
It's ProVUE.com, ProVUE.com.
You guys, I can't believe you don't. It's the Panorama database that's been around for. Well, Jim is like
Forever.
23 years old, but he did it when he was 2. So
this is not my first Apple transition.
Hey, I wanted to take.
Is that your site?
What's that?
ProVUE.com.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I see Michael Rhino here. Michael, thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. I have to jump off in about 20 minutes to join another one in that. I wanted to listen in. So thank you.
Any thoughts, since you have just a couple minutes, any thoughts on the Apple keynote or the ARM transition?
And you know what? I'm not even that familiar with those programs. I kind of joined this more to listen in and learn about it as opposed to kind of give more from my end. So,
well, this is going to be awkward because we were hoping you just carry the show.
Yeah, Michael, come on.
I wish I could.
Come on. I was like, finally, Michael Rhino's here. You got to tell us everything.
Yeah.
Here's all the answers, right?
Take a good look around the room, and you're going to expect to learn anything from this group? Oh, my God.
Jeff, I was curious. You said at the top that you had read some negative things about the ARM transition, and I'm wondering if you remember what that was.
Yeah, the idea that, and I want to be real careful because I don't want to reveal where it came from. But the idea that, okay, we got to go through another transition. Apple's making us do another transition. And I was a little surprised that, at the attitude. It's like I thought they did a pretty good job of trying to explain in very short order the benefits, not just to Apple, but also to the user base.
Was that a user or developer speaking?
It was a user, to be fair. It was a user.
Oh.
And it's like, I get it.
People are afraid of change.
Everybody likes to complain.
Always.
They get hits.
Well, in the comments, I can
human
tell you
nature.
This, yeah, the comments were that they're afraid that they're in the transition once again. They're just like the transition to Catalina, that they're going to lose apps, and that they're going to lose support for certain pieces of legacy hardware. I didn't find out how legacy the hardware was, but
if you're relying on legacy hardware, to me there are 2 reasons why you do that. The first one is because you don't see the value in replacing legacy hardware for your business, which means that your competition is ahead of you. And the other reason is because you're doing something that relies on a piece of hardware software that is so critical to what you do, but it's been abandoned. Now, in that case, you don't worry about what's happening with the new operating systems and new machines because you have the old machine for the legacy stuff. So it still doesn't matter.
And Jeff, I agree with you completely. But I think there's just this perception, that people in my opinion, people sort of hit a certain point and they don't want to then continue to advance or change. They can do everything they want to as they want or need to, and they don't see any reason to go farther.
And that's okay.
And that's okay, but don't expect the rest of us to hold back.
Right.
Yeah,
I think
Apple is not holding a gun to anyone's head saying that you have to install Catalina, you have to install Big Sur, you have to buy an an Apple Silicon-based Mac.
Well, I can tell you there's a lot of customers, or some number of customers, that they don't want anyone else to move forward either, because then that might mean that, they might have to. So there's a significant stop the world,
Of course. That's how
continue
people
out there.
are.
But you know what? They're not customers. They're not going to spend any money. I think for end users, this is not going to be that big of a transition. The big one was last year. And, when they dropped 32-bit support last year, I mean, that was obvious that, ARM is coming. And that's what that transition was about last year, of dropping 32-bit apps. They knew that 32-bit apps were not going to be supported on ARM. So last year was a prep. So anything that made that cut, any app that made that cut, almost all of them are almost certainly going to make this ARM transition without a problem.
Well, I want to speak up for some of these people. If they are so that resistant to change, that's what virtualization is for. Let them run their, OS, 10.4 Tiger code, on the latest.
Well, they won't be able
hardware.
to do that on an ARM machine, though.
We don't know yet.
We
don't know yet.
You cannot run the virtualization will not run other operating systems. So you can't run Windows on the ARM.
They showed
machine.
it running Linux.
That was an ARM. Linux is open source. They made an ARM Linux.
Okay. So, all right. But what about? So right now that may be true, but what about VMware or Parallels? I'm sure.
Well,
I thought Parallels made a statement yesterday that that Apple was actually running their software during the demo.
Yes, but they weren't running Intel virtual machines. The Rosetta 2 is not an emulator. It only works with code that's in, basically Apple recognized packages, so like in apps and other things like that. And apparently, they're actually, when an app is installed, they're actually doing some sort of pre-processing at that time. So it's not in runtime emulation. It's apparently running through and finding all the code and doing it in advance. And that's why they're able to get pretty decent performance, because they're doing a lot of the work ahead of time. And that's why they can't, I'm extrapolating. I haven't seen this announcement, but I'm pretty sure that's why it won't run Windows, because Apple has no way of in advance going and pre-processing all the code in Windows. Plus Windows, there's a lot of 32-bit code. It's not just 64, which makes the problem exponentially more difficult. So, it's possible that Parallels could come up with an emulator. I mean, remember when we had PowerPC, there were products like that would run Windows on a PowerPC machine, and they did emulation. And you may also recall that they were really slow, and you had to be really desperate.
So we'll see.
I think maybe they won't be quite as slow as that. There's technology's a little bit better, but I think it's likely to be fairly poor performance.
Yeah, let's
and it's probably going to be a while
on the Luddites. If they can't run on a VM, then either stay with your old Mac or ultimately reach in your pocket and spend some money and upgrade and get a machine you can use for another 20 years.
Yeah, I think there's some people that should really consider they need to go out and buy the last Intel machine before it goes away.
Yeah,
Brittany, you were trying to get in there, and I want to make sure you have a chance, because I know you don't have the proper mic set up yet.
That's fine. I don't remember what it was. I'm sorry.
Oh. Yeah, and that's another thing too that I think I was kind of surprised at this, because Jim, you had said they communicated the 64-bit transition, so there was more than enough time for developers and anybody else to upgrade their products. And now Tim Cook just communicated at least a 2-year transition, if not longer, for this one. So if you have something you're relying on, that should be plenty of time for you to communicate with the developer, find out if it's going to be updated, and if it's not, start looking around for a replacement.
Well, I figure it's 2 years plus 3 years. You buy a machine and then 3 years with Apple Plus. So you've got like 5 years to plan for this.
There you go.
I think that sounds
it's got more time than that, right? Because they just started selling $6,000 Mac Pro 6 months ago, right? So these guys, they have to be thinking these guys are going to stick around for a long time. So they have to be supported for a long time as well. So, I don't think they're going to start sort of pushing Intel support out 2 years from now.
Oh, no, they're not going to push Intel support out for quite a while. I think 5 years is a reasonable window for phasing out all of the new hardware development and sales that involves Intel. And then after that, we'll have several years where the the Intel binaries are still supported. And so with the whole pandemic, refresh my memory, what year is this? 2020? Is that right?
26.
For the rest of us anyway, Jeff. Yeah.
It's still early March, at least as far as I'm concerned.
Today's Tuesday, right?
It's Blur's Day.
Yeah.
Yes. So, all right. So it's October 138th, 2020. And so I'm expecting that here we are in 2020. So let's project out. We're going to be pushing close to 2030 when the last remnants of Intel support are finally gone. I think.
What year was the start of the transition to Intel? I'm a new Mac user of like over a decade, but not much longer.
Jim would know.
It was 2005.
2005. Okay.
And
then Lion was when they dropped Rosetta 1. That was what, 2010?
Let's see. The first Intel was Tiger and 10.4. The later versions of Tiger supported Intel. And then 10.5 supported Intel and PowerPC. And 10.6 did not support PowerPC.
And Rosetta was gone in Lion. I remember that.
And then Rosetta was dropped in 10.7.
Yeah.
But 10.6 already you could not run on a PowerPC machine.
Mike is at the dinner table, but he just typed in Snow Leopard was the final PowerPC version. 10.7 Lion dropped.
No, Snow Leopard did not support PowerPC.
Snow Leopard did not.
It had Rosetta. Right. Yeah. It could run PowerPC apps, but it would not run on PowerPC hardware. And that wasn't that long after they had stopped selling them. So, what Apple said was 2-year transition. To me, what they said was, in 2 years, we will not be selling any Intel machines.
Right. That's
but
my understanding.
I did not hear any promise of, how long will we keep coming, coming out with operating systems that will run on Intel machines. I would think next year obviously they'll still be selling machines. So maybe the next one and maybe the one after, and that's probably about it. And then it'll be ARM only, I'll bet. They'll still be supporting, certainly as developers, I would think, we'll be pushing out universal binaries for quite a while.
Years.
Yeah, 6-7 years.
All right, so let's assume that the last Intel Mac that's released is 2 years from now.
Well, not released. I think what they're saying. Let's assume the last ARM Mac will be a Mac Pro. So I think what there's, to me, what I took that as, within 2 years we'll be selling an ARM Mac Pro.
Okay, so 2 years from now, Apple's Mac lineup will consist of ARM-based computers only.
Right.
Okay, so let's say that the last Intel Macs are sold 2 years from now.
Right.
And how long is it? Because I have lost track of time in pandemic time. How long is it from the time a computer is released to the point that it's considered legacy and all support options are dropped, including hardware replacement components?
I think Apple does it around 7 years.
Okay, so there we go. Now we know our time frame.
No,
yeah, my
they
2012
absolutely did not. Because they'll say, that doesn't mean we have to give you new operating systems. Yeah, we have to sell replacement parts so that you can make the machine work. That's what that support means.
Sure, but what I'm talking about right now is how long can we look to see any level of Intel support? And so that would include replacement parts. As far as operating system goes, I agree with you completely. It is not going to be 7 years out. It will be sooner than that when we hit a version of macOS that requires an ARM processor to upgrade.
What?
Well, as one data point, I just had the battery in my 2013 MacBook Air replaced for free somehow. And apparently it's going to run Big Sur. So I'm keeping it for a little while longer. It's a brand new battery, has been, I'm assuming, cleaned out on the inside. So running like new.
Now let's talk about other things. We're getting too much time on.
I agree. I do feel obligated to point out one thing though, that I think there is another divider here, and that's Catalina. I mean, it may not have to do with hardware, but Catalina represented the transition to 64-bit, and so that feels like that will factor into the equation somehow. I don't exactly know how. That wraps up the first part of our discussion with our super panel from MacVoices Live discussing Apple's WWDC keynote this year. A quick note here. First of all, this MacVoices Live went a little bit longer. First of all, because we had such a fantastic panel, and second, because there was just so much to cover. So this is going to be broken into 3 different parts. It's a little bit unusual, but I felt like it deserved it. And for folks who have been participating or paying attention to MacVoices Live and subscribe to the MacVoices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter, you know that I've been using MacVoices Live as sort of a testing ground for different things. So this is going to end up being another test that I didn't expect, breaking a show into 3 different parts and seeing what your reaction is. So this is not necessarily going to become a regular thing, but when the topic warrants it or the guest warrants it, then that's what we'll be doing. But if you have feedback on that, please feel free to drop me an email, chuck@macvoices.com. Otherwise, check back for the next part of our discussion, and also plan to join us Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern for the next edition of MacVoices Live. Until then, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Visit macvoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.